All right, look at this crowd. This is fantastic. Pete, you're a rock star, but here we are, folks. We're getting so excited about this panel. I've been in Chicago all week. I don't know about you three, but I've been so excited about this panel. We have such a vault of knowledge up here. But just like my appearance on CNBC, the producer already told me, killer, wrap it, keep it tight. They want to hear what you have to say. So I'm so excited to have you here. But let's kick off. Olaf, we talk a lot about in this room and at this Bitcoin conference, some people still have apprehension. No, you don't. But some people still have apprehension to buying Bitcoin directly. What other ways can people get exposure to Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, I think buying Bitcoin is like the simplest way to get started into this whole rabbit hole. One of the remarkable things to me is the number of people that really understand Bitcoin and then later think it's a bad idea is really, really low. Just in general, anecdotally, I think about 98% of people that understand cryptocurrency conceptually get totally obsessed with it, basically. This was something I noticed really early, and I think it has really played out. When I look at the size of this room, I was at the original summer 2013 San Jose Bitcoin conference, and it was a lot smaller. So it's remarkable to see how everything has grown since then. But yeah, I think buying Bitcoin is the simple way to get started. You know, River.com, Coinbase.com, these kinds of websites.
Okay, well, that's great. And quick follow-up question, then I want to work my way down here. But you do a great job of evaluating companies. You've been really successful evaluating companies in the Bitcoin ecosystem. What's your metrics? What's your approach on evaluating those companies?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we're looking for new business models that are uniquely enabled by new technological developments. So, you know, sometimes a business can be sort of a remix of old things and just sort of applying them in a new way. Sometimes there's like an actual deep technical breakthrough that leads to a new business model that genuinely wasn't possible before. That's the category that we're really excited about and where I think a lot of the outlier returns in this industry are.
I love it. I love it. And Tim, look at that tie, folks. Let's give him a round. Look at that tie. So Tim,
I got the socks too.
I'd sit here and love to talk about your tight end. He was a tight end at Stanford. So I'd love to sit here and talk football. But I really want to understand, you seem really reserved, especially when I see you on CNBC, really quiet. So tell me, why do you care about Bitcoin? Let's get that passion. Let's get that tangible feeling.
Okay, before I do that, I just want to say, I am so happy to be in the free country of Miami.
Yeah.
You have no idea what, I mean, where people are looking down at their feet in California, and I'm thinking, come on, there's a life. It's so nice to be here. The freedom is so important, and I'm getting to your question because freedom is so important for the success of a society. I think about Korea. They have a demilitarized zone between South and North Korea, and North Korea was all socialist, all Marxist, all government control, and South Korea was free and open, free markets, democracy, and today the average South Korean makes 460 times what the average North Korean makes, and that's adjusting for purchasing power. And the average South Korean is now 4 inches taller than the average North Korean. So, I mean, you want a free country like Miami.
That's right.
And then the other part that really makes a great society is trust. Lee Kuan Yew came in and took over Singapore about 70 years ago. And during that 70 years ago, he just built trust one brick at a time. And he took Singapore from being the poorest country in the world and the least trustworthy to the most trustworthy and one of the richest countries in the world per capita. And so trust is the other thing I really want to point out. So you put together freedom and trust, and what do you get? Bitcoin! So people say, why do you want to have Bitcoin? Freedom and trust. And then people say, well, when are you going to sell your Bitcoin? And I think, into what? What would I ever? It's like saying, oh, you've got a bunch of euros, let's turn them into drachma or French francs. Or let's take US dollars and turn them into Confederate money. I mean, there's no sense in it. if you've got Bitcoin, you've got the currency of the future. And so why try to change your currency of the future into the currency of the past?
Well, let me grab that real quick from you. Talking about future, and this is next level conversations, but Alyse, you're a rock star in your own right, and I want to talk a little bit more about Bitcoin DeFi. And more importantly, before we get to that, you have your pulse on a variety of different lenses. You're looking through an observer lens, a board member lens, an investor lens. What has your attention right now? Before we get into Bitcoin DeFi, because I know Olaf's very excited about that conversation, what has your attention?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. It's great to be here in a room filled with Bitcoiners. There's a lot going on with Bitcoin right now, and so my attention is fully on Bitcoin. So I'm heads down. I run a venture capital firm that does just Bitcoin. So I work I work just with the types of folks that are in this room, and that's why I'm excited to be here. So we know that Bitcoin is an exponentially improving technology, number one. And number two, it's also the best and first true form of digitally native money, right? And so what I look at is what can be done with those two things. So Bitcoin as a truly decentralized protocol, what can be built on top of that? What new utilities can be unlocked? That's where Bitcoin DeFi fits in. It just inherently, Bitcoin is decentralized finance DeFi. And then I'm also looking at what can be developed once Bitcoin is established as a store of value, which it is now very singularly amongst cryptocurrencies, and what it means to have a digitally native money. You can do much more with a currency that matches modern times, and that's what Bitcoin is.
Well, that's really fascinating. And Olaf, before I kick it back to you, I'm going to go back to Tim, because this whole Bitcoin DeFi, on CNBC, we have a lot of conversations. We're very focused on Fed Chairman Powell. So I guess when we talk about Bitcoin DeFi, it's a really exciting, enthusiastic movement. Is Bitcoin going to replace the Fed? Is the Federal Reserve done?
Yeah.
Let's go.
No, look, the Fed, there are a lot of really bright people in the Fed, and they're looking and they're trying to figure, they have two mandates, and one is employment and one is keeping inflation down. And today, they're just under attack because inflation's coming, and unemployment is crazy because they did this crazy lockdown thing. So being a part of the Fed would be a very difficult time. But I mean, if you go forward 10 years and Bitcoin's technology does go through Moore's Law, the accelerating technology, there will be no reason to own fiat money, because you're going to be able to buy everything you want at the grocery store with Bitcoin. And if your choice is, I want a currency that is 100% stable, you know exactly how many there are out there, and it's open, transparent, global, you can use it anywhere, frictionless, or you want a currency that is tied to a government that is made up of people who really want to they can manipulate your currency, then you really do have, and they can inflate your currency, then you have no choice. You would just say, well, I only want to operate in Bitcoin. There will be a time when people will say, I'm not going to take the dollar anymore, sure, because I only want to take Bitcoin, because I don't know how many they're going to print, and I don't know whether it's worth it. And I'm going to take you a little further, because one of the reasons I got so excited about Bitcoin is I met this guy from Argentina, Sebastian Serrano, started Ripio. He said, during my life, my family's made and lost a fortune 3 times, and I'm only 30 years old. And I said, what do you mean? He said, all to currency manipulation by politicians. And so where's his incentive to operate in the Argentinian peso? There is no incentive there. There's no incentive to drive or build or be a great entrepreneur when you just know the government's going to take it away from you sometime. And with Bitcoin, he can actually operate a business and build value in that business. And I think the Fed's speaking.
That's right. I don't think they're giving us the curtain call yet, but just kind of take it a step further to this Bitcoin DeFi conversation. I think it's just a fascinating conversation. So Olaf, give us a little bit of your
Yeah, I
thoughts
mean,
inside.
and to add on to what you just said, Tim, it's always been very intuitive to me that kind of computer algorithmic money would replace centralized fiat money. It's just obvious, kind of. I do think there's a generational gap. When you look at young people, they all understand cryptocurrency. It just makes sense. Whereas, people say Bitcoin's complicated. It is, but the dollar is way more complicated. And a lot of these policies that lead to inflation, it's kind of a secret regressive tax. Asset owners see their assets appreciate in value through inflation, whereas people that hold cash in dollars are the ones who are actually penalized and taxed through that inflation. And so, right now you're seeing, why are we in sort of like an economic depression, but at the same time asset prices are at an all-time high. And it's primarily because inflation is being reflected in those asset prices more than it is in more traditional ways of measuring inflation, like the consumer price index. So anyway, to this idea of algorithmic money, I do think that what we're seeing in crypto that's exciting is the separation of sort of Bitcoin the asset from Bitcoin the protocol. So over 1% of Bitcoin now is on other blockchains being, kind of used in all these various different ways. As a lending system, for market making, all these sorts of things that are built on Ethereum and other systems. I think that number will grow to like 10% and way beyond. And what you see there then is sort of Bitcoin the asset being used on many, many different crypto protocol systems. And I think it's a massive tailwind for Bitcoin. So I think, all of the development in Ethereum, even more like esoteric cutting edge stuff like Definity, I think it all leads back to Bitcoin's price going up, basically, because it's basically adding utility to Bitcoin the asset without actually relying on block space in Bitcoin the protocol. So to me, all of this stuff is sort of a strong tailwind for the Bitcoin price. And this is like why these decentralized financial instruments, they're a big deal to me. Decentralized organizations, you're effectively putting the corporate apparatus into a software-based system instead of a legal substrate, the way it's defined today with pen and paper.
Is that where you're finding your investment opportunities currently?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of investment opportunities there. These, DAO or decentralized autonomous organization style structures, they're really, to me, like the second big asset class that's been created. The first one with Bitcoin is sort of money, right? The second one looks and feels a little bit like a corporate share. And it represents an interest in some sort of underlying business, whether that's a market-making system, a lending book, whatever it might be. Over the long term, I think those DAO-style systems could support, more like rich web-style applications. So this is a decentralized organization with sort of tokenized shares owning like a Twitter or a Signal or a Tinder, applications like that.
Fascinating. Alyse, hop in, please.
Yeah, so I think, I would disagree with a lot of what you just said, actually. So I think just to...
Boom!
Stir the pot. It's good.
Well, to set context, and many of the folks in this room know that if Ethereum, if Definity, if other protocols succeed, that will be because Bitcoin succeeded. Now, if Bitcoin succeeds, it will be despite of other protocols like Ethereum and Definity trying to muddy the waters with FUD and distraction. And a great example of this is the capital misallocation that happens in the space. So this is the opportunity, I think, of Stillmark, and Tim works in this space too, which is to really deploy capital into companies that are building true businesses with business models that are based on more than gambling, right? That are figuring out how to monetize the value they're creating for folks broadly. So Tim started off talking about what happens with currencies that are not decentralized, right? So Tim spent a lot of time talking about what happens in centralized fiat systems, which is that the rules are sort of unknown. You're forced to participate. You don't know when the rules are going to change or when the monetary supply is going to change. That's not true in Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is a system of software rules and no rulers. It's truly decentralized, and one of the reasons it can be truly decentralized is because Satoshi took a step back, right? So he put us, the community, first, and the value of Bitcoin first, and his ego second. And we know that that's not the same with other cryptocurrencies, right? So it makes Bitcoin inherently different from other spaces. Now, what can you do when you have a truly decentralized network? You can have a hard money. Tim was talking about the value of hard money, right? But beyond that, and what I hope we can spend the last few minutes of the panel on, is you can really build some sort of revolutionary, almost mind-bending companies and tech. So I'll start by offering an example of one. So we know that we have a decentralized Bitcoin blockchain, and that's necessary, right, to have anything else be decentralized built on top of it. So to build DeFi on a centralized protocol, right, or one that is a protocol managed by rulers, is inherently broken from the start. But in Bitcoin, we have a chance to build truly decentralized finance. So what does that look like? That can look like trading being activated on Liquid Network. In addition to having decentralization of Bitcoin, you can also trade in a gasless state. Let me take a step back and talk about something that's easier to touch and that you can interact with today. We know that we have Bitcoin Core Protocol and then decentralized protocols built on top of it, like Lightning Network. And with Lightning Network, you can get money moving quickly, right? So it's a cash-like transaction. With that, with this internet native currency, you can do things like financial chat in an entirely new way. So an example is an app called Sphinx Chat, where you can transact it via SMS, via Lightning nodes rather than servers. You can make calls in the same way. You can paywall content. So we're seeing things like content creators gather their audience in tribes and then be able to monetize their content through a streaming stats versus advertising.
Alyse, I hate to jump in, but you don't have an IFB in your ear saying rep, rep, rep. So we got about a minute and a half left. And I want to kind of get some price targets from everyone about Bitcoin. That's going to be important to the room. If I go back to my days playing football for Coach Holtz, he had an acronym he utilized, WIN. It stands for what's important now. So,
you know, it used to be called whip inflation now. And what does Bitcoin do? It whips inflation now.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. So we can just, Olaf, come on down this week. Got about a minute left here. We'd love to hear a price target, and we'd like to hear what's important now to you in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Just
You got
price
20
target.
seconds, no pressure.
Yeah, I think, you know, let's just say $1 million. The way I think about it is gold parity feels like obvious and inevitable, and then I think Bitcoin is worth a lot more, actually. So let's say $1 million.
Done. Mr. Draper?
By when?
Oh, that's a harder question. I think maybe 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah.
We may be aligned there. I'm saying 250,000 by the end of 2022 or the very beginning of 2023. And then volatility will dampen, and it'll be up from there. So probably end up hitting where Olaf's way smarter than any of us. Well, actually, no, sorry, Olaf. I just found somebody smarter.
Alyse, take us out here.
I think I'm not going to argue with their price targets. I hope that they're right. It's not important. What's important is that we continue to advance the ethos of decentralization and that we continue to support or even encourage more permissionless innovation in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Everyone.
All right.
All right, we are all done, and thank you for investing in the Bitcoin ecosystem.